I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into one of the most inspiring immigrant success stories you will ever hear. We're talking with one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite guests. His name is Michael Gloukhov, and he has penned a powerful memoir. It is called Sofia-Brussels-Washington, From Serfdom to Freedom to Self-Accomplishment. In the book, he charts his dramatic journey from war-torn Bulgaria through Europe to achieving the American dream. His story of escaping communism, rebuilding from scratch, and joining the U.S. Navy at 43 years of age will captivate and motivate anyone chasing freedom and purpose. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us once again here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Bookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan, for the kind words and the honor to be on your show again.
It's an honor to have you back again, sir. Let's start out by talking about a basic question. How did communism come about as a system in your country of origin?
This is actually a very good question because it's hooked deep in history in 19th century. Bulgaria used to be part of the Ottoman Empire for 5 centuries. And in 1877, Russia declared war to Turkey, and the Russian troop had to go through Bulgaria in order to reach Istanbul. Now, the logic of this war was that Russia still today doesn't have access to warm waters. And taking Istanbul would be this access because it will control the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles that are controlled by Turkey. And incidentally had to go through Bulgaria. Technically speaking, with the help of Bulgarian volunteers, the Russians managed to beat the Turks. Actually, the Turks stopped them, and the Bulgarian volunteers stopped the Turks at the mid of the Balkans, in a mount called Shipka. Their ammunition were finished, so they started throwing rocks and dead bodies, and the Turks stopped, which helped Russia to gain the war. I'm not going into details how the Russians behaved. The post history with the arrival of communism was faked, and everything was nice and beautiful. But if we go back in history and read what some important literary critics and observers wrote about the Russian behavior, it was not much different than what we see in Ukraine today. And not only that, but they've been indignated that people like Bulgaria could live much better than them while being considered kind of semi-slaves in the Turkish Empire. Now, because of those ancient communications and history, during the Second World War, uh, Bulgaria sided with Germany with the intent to control the whole Macedonia, which, according to old Bulgarian maps and when Bulgaria was deemed to be empire, belonged to Bulgaria. That was a long time ago. And German victory would confirm that. So during the Second World War, uh, Germany was uh, involved in massive attacks in the Eastern Front, against Yugoslavia while the Bulgarian troops were occupying those territories. Now, Bulgaria had non-aggression treaty with the Soviet Union, but in 1944, September the 3rd, the Russians violated this treaty, declared war to Bulgaria, and just invaded it. And that's how communism came. There were about 5,000 communists in the whole country that were mostly criminals, terrorists, and they, for most of them, escaped in the Soviet Union, and they came back in the Soviet wagons and tanks, and uh, they just been propelled to take over the society, execute the elite. Actually, two-thirds of the Bulgarian parliament was shot to death. And a couple of years later, that was 1944, in 1951, a Marshal Biruzov, very high official Soviet military, arrived specifically in Bulgaria to open the labor camps, the same gulag as in the Soviet Union. People's trials began, mass executions, disappearances. Basically, the whole civil society and the elite disappeared. And that's how communism began in Bulgaria. Some still today, there are Russophiles that love Russia and Putin. I'm very suspicious about their motivation now when Bulgaria is a free country. But we're not going to discuss that subject now.
Yeah.
So that was the picture at that time, and it lasted until actually Gorbachev decided to drop uh, the East German leader Honecker. The Berlin Wall fell in November 1989, and the next day the regime in Bulgaria collapsed too.
How did it
But,
feel? I'm sorry.
but between this collapse and the real democracy had to go for 20 more years. It's not easy. Once civil society is destroyed, the mentality of people changes. Everything becomes different, and it takes a very long time to reverse back to normal.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 generations until the new children that can come in power would not remember what it used to be.
Amazing. Amazing. Such a challenge to you as a society and to you personally as well. What was it like being deprived of your liberty, your personal freedoms?
Or you can feel it immediately because you have no privacy, you have no right to object to anything the authorities uh, land on you through their networks, like networks of young communists, young pioneers. I've been hooked to those networks too. Inevitably, it was mandatory. So they're watching your behavior, and according to your behavior, you may be allowed to continue to some good schools after you graduate high school. That was not my case because of my father's service as a royal officer.
You emigrated.
And also the military service, a lot of hazing. When I arrive in your unit, they know everything about you, and they tell you you are a child of a fascist officer, so watch it, behave. So you've been warned, and that's all over the place. And although my good diploma and success in the admission exams I've never been admitted to university. So I decided that I'll take my destiny in my own hands. You live only once. I had a pretty good idea how the life in the West was, and I wanted to be part of it. And ultimately, I made it.
Yeah. Your first stop was Belgium. And when you went to Belgium, you advanced your education. Tell us about that. You're also taking care of a mother and a small sister. Tell us about that part of your story.
It was a little bit more complicated than that. Um, I mentioned in our previous interview that if I want to live in some foreign country, like I had proper connections for Belgium
Mhm.
and decided it will be there, I'm going to learn the language first and be able to have normal conversation, to be able to read, uh, speak, and write,
Mm.
which I achieved. It was expensive through private lessons, but that was the objective of my life, long-term objective. I was not looking what's going to happen to me tomorrow or the day after, but 10 or 20 years from now.
Mm.
And that's how I behaved all my life,
Mm.
with planning. What do you need to achieve in order to move from point A to point B, and start collecting the means in order to achieve that, and then move to the next point.
Mm.
But the first thing was to leave the eastern zone. The
Mm.
eastern zone was the periphery, was Yugoslavia, because Yugoslavia was not part of the Warsaw Pact, in the Soviet bloc. Actually, they had a rift with Stalin already in the beginning. Stalin wanted to infiltrate the Yugoslav Communist Party and army. He did not succeed. He threatened Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia became member of the Balkan Pact. It was a military defense treaty, temporary, but it was between Yugoslavia, Greece, and Turkey. Greece and Turkey being members of NATO, and thanks to the Truman Doctrine.
Mm.
As we know, this doctrine in 1948 proclaimed that the United States are going to help people who fight for their freedom, with advice, weapons. Uh, that was very effective. So, in spite of that, Yugoslavia was still communist, and it's better not to be caught crossing its territory because there will be extradition. However, the security measures on the border were not so strong
Mhm.
like with Greece and Turkey, because the Yugoslavs had their international passports in their pockets. They
Mhm.
could travel around the world, work there, come back with their money, and open a business.
Mhm.
So that was the contrary of what the Soviet bloc was. So I had to go through Yugoslavia without being caught. And there are only two ways, actually three ways. The one is to crawl through the territory and hiding, and with strong probability to be caught.
Mm.
The second one is to go with paid vacation, I mean organized vacation, which is very expensive.
Mhm.
It's certainly not for people like me. And the third one is if you can invent some kind of family relationship and ask to, permission to visit those people. And there were all kinds of conditions. You have to be finish your military service. You need to have the signature of your boss. You need definitely you need to work somewhere, and your boss needs to certify with a signature and stamp that you're uh, the system can trust you. You're reliable. for the communists. And that was my weak point. I decided to use the communist mentality by thinking everybody is scared from them and their laziness, natural laziness. They may not imagine that I'm going to lie to that point. And I just tell them, oh, comrades, I just quit the job here because I'm preparing for admission exams in Yugoslavia. But that was my last job here. So if you can certify that I worked here, this is what they ask from you.
Hmm.
So thanks God they didn't read what was asked from them because they could not imagine that I'm going to lie to that point. And I had to do it. It's
Yeah.
take it or leave it. If I'm caught, I'm going to play dumb and somehow I may survive. But I had to take this risk and it worked.
Yeah.
And I got this permission. And ultimately, I left Yugoslavia, my mother and my sister after me the same way. Then leaving Yugoslavia was a different story. That was a suspense for me. I left with a Yugoslav passport without changing picture. I've been helped by a woman who was sister of the owner of the passport who agreed to give it to me. And it worked too.
Hmm.
And once in Italy, it was much easier
Hmm.
to move further. Now, there is another requirement. If you go to the West, you have to ask for political asylum in the first country that you cross the borders,
Hmm.
NATO country or Western country, which was, of course, Italy. And I didn't do that. um, I didn't do that because I didn't want to spend time in refugee camps. I already knew French, and the guy who was going to sponsor me helped me to move on. So actually, he's the one who finds the passport for me. Then he went with this passport in the Belgian embassy in Belgrade and obtained visa without my presence. And once I got that for Belgium, sky was the limit.
Yeah.
In the meantime, my mother left. He gave her an address in Belgrade uh, with a woman with a small child who also agreed to give her passport. My sister was 8 years old, and ultimately, when I received my refugee passport 2 months later, it was just for Christmas. We went now with an official passport that I could travel in all the countries of the European community. And I waited in Milan while this person called Grisha moved back to Yugoslavia and extracted my mother with my sister with their Yugoslav passports.
Amazing. We're
Also,
almost out of time, Michael, so I have to stop you. All
yeah,
of
that
this
was in December 1968, and
amazing.
the rest was easy.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing struggle for freedom, amazing fight for freedom, amazing heroism throughout. The story is all captured within the book. Your ultimate goal was to get to the United States, and at 43 years old, you decided you wanted to serve our country in the US Navy. Just 30 seconds. What was it like arriving in America, and why did you want to serve in the US Navy?
Um, Again, another good question. Actually, I didn't want initially to come to the United States. I didn't know English, so you know my principle. But the circumstances and destinies were such that I met some American women working in the embassy,
Mhm.
and they wanted to have a relationship with me, which I postponed for 2 years until I graduate. I didn't want to be distracted by love stories. To
Mhm.
me, graduating was matter of life or death, and the key for success.
Yeah.
Uh, Ultimately, I selected one of them. I married her. Um, I'm not going to get into the details, but the destiny was such that when I chose between the two women, the one I selected was going to be sent to Tehran and be taken hostage with the members of the embassy and the fall of the Shah. So when I married her, she stayed. The other one went to the embassy in South Africa, then to Lebanon, and was blown up by terrorists
Oh,
with the embassy. She died at the age of 30 on
horrible.
April 12,
Horrible.
1983.
We've got to stop you there, Michael. We're out of time, but it's an unbelievable story, folks. It is in this book. It is highly recommended. Michael is a true American hero. He has served in the U.S. Navy at an advanced age at 43. He has made an unbelievable trek from communism and totalitarianism into freedom. He advanced his education. He helped the people around him, the people he cared about, the people he loved. It's an incredible story. It's called Sofia-Brussels-Washington, From Serfdom to Freedom to Self-Accomplishment. Michael, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much, Logan. It was a privilege.
Privilege
to
is all mine,
continue.
sir. I enjoyed hearing your story. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.